Look at me.
What do you see? A rich and preppy student? A football or baseball fan? Your stereotypical suburban middle-class kid? Someone who is societally privileged? A person who is isolated from race?
Now look at me. How do you feel? Do you see someone who is obsessed with her own looks, ignorant to the world around me, and shallow?
Now look at me. What do you think? Do you think of someone who's highly intelligent, highly introverted, someone who's submissive, and who you usually hear speaking in broken English?
Now look at me. What do you believe? Do you see someone who's angry, ignorant, lazy, or even ghetto?
Now this is who we really are. I'm Joe. I'm a suburban middle-class student. I go to a very racially diverse high school at Irondequoit High School, so I am not at all isolated from race. I am very open-minded. I don't really like football nor baseball. I'm more of a swimmer. When I get older, I want to become a doctor, and although I do recognize my own white privilege, I also recognize that it is a system that needs to be broken down and changed.
I'm Bridget. I care more about my academics than my appearances. I've never been to a Starbucks in my life. And I use my position of privilege to advocate for marginalized groups in my community and world around me.
I'm Abby. I was actually adopted and raised by a white family. I can be outspoken at times, but still take very strong stances in my activism. I love to advocate for women in third world countries, but most importantly, I hate math. I want to be a journalist, not a scientist or a doctor.
I'm Kayla. I live in the suburbs with my mother and father. I love to cheerlead and play softball. I have a 3.5 GPA and a love for foreign languages, and I'm inspired to be an architect.
We want you to think about your deep-rooted internalized biases. Not what you say or do, but what you think and feel. How close to reality were your thoughts when you first saw us?
Internal bias puts people of color in this so infamously referred to box. It is what allows for the perpetuation of stereotypes and the oppression of marginalized groups of people. This is why it is so important for us, as a group, to tackle these internalized biases.
So now we would like to introduce a video showing what the students at IHS, along with several other school districts we have invited, have done to deconstruct racism within our communities.
You don't really get the exposure to people of other races or other cultures.
It's a scene you don't see every day in school. Students from districts throughout Monroe County all gather together to talk about one thing: race.
People think that Native Americans are gone.
It's called the Student Summit on Race. The event was hosted early this year at Irondequoit High School. During a recent Need to Know taping, West Irondequoit Superintendent Jeff Crane said after a Facing Race, Embracing Equity film screening and discussion on race in his district, authentic conversations on the subject had to continue.
I think if a white person says it, it's racist.
Be a non-racist.
So he invited the St. Louis-based project Gateway to Change and its student leaders to assist. He also sent an open invitation to high school students from all Monroe County school districts. Gateway to Change launched after the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. The group travels the country working to empower fellow peers to become positive change agents in their communities. The goal of the summit was to deepen student understanding of race relations in Rochester. Students examine problems that exist and propose solutions to make change.
It's just an extermination of ignorance. Not an extermination, but just an assault on ignorance. Because it's not really a problem of bigotry anymore. It's a problem of ignorance. Bigotry is the old generation, and ignorance is our problem.
The Student Summit brought together 7 students and 2 advisors from the St. Louis-Ferguson area.
We brought together 13 school districts, including the Rochester City School District.
With over 180 students in attendance.
For one powerful day of race discussions.
One of the main points of the summit was to distinct and understand the difference between being a non-racist and an anti-racist.
A non-racist is someone who doesn't laugh when a racist joke is made. An anti-racist is someone who will stand up against that joke. It's the difference between being passive and an activist against racism.
Another term linked to the idea of internalized race bias is colorism. Colorism is the belief that the lighter someone's skin tone is, the smarter and the prettier they are, while having a darker skin tone makes a person less intelligent, not as pretty, or is even seen as less than. This has caused problems in minority communities, as lighter skin tones are glorified, making people look down on someone simply because they have a darker skin tone. It's a battle between, in today's terms, light skin versus dark skin. This creates the internalization of racism amongst minorities.
After the summit, students were asked to write down how they had felt empowered, and they said,
love everyone and respect their cultures.
Listen to each other's stories and be an ally.
be an anti-racist.
Continue the conversation by educating people on issues of racism, cultural appropriation, and colorism in the Black community.
Our goal today is to empower you to become an anti-racist. And we have two simple ideas to get you started. First, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
The best example I could give you of this was when I was invited to go see a documentary called I'm Not Racist, Am I? And at first, I didn't want to go. I had only ever had race-based conversations with my friends, and I didn't know anybody else invited to go see the documentary. So that's kind of weird. So I was like, no. And then I thought about it more, and I was like, no, I'm going to make myself go. This is something that I'm interested in. It's something I want to talk about. So I forced myself to go, and it ended up being such a great opportunity for me, and also for me to also get more involved in Rochester.
I also saw the documentary, but unlike Abby, I saw it at my own school. But it was still a very uncomfortable moment discussing the topic of race, even with my own classmates. The video inspired us to hold the Student Summit on Race to further expand the conversation to other schools.
That brings us to our second piece of advice, which would be to expand your circles. From our experiences with the Student Summit and the documentary, a group at Irondequoit High School is working on developing a website that will be a forum for youth and young adults in the Rochester area to discuss their experiences with racism in our community.
We are the generation that's going to end racism.
Join us in our journey.
Yeah.